Welcome back, everyone. And in today's video lesson, we are going to look at how to build basic chords. Now, a couple of quick key points. One is that basic chords and chords in general are going to be tertian based, and that just means that we're going to be building them based off of thirds, right? So third intervals. And the formulas are always going to be, and this is really, really key, they're always going to be from major scales. And this is a really super key point. So they have to be from major scales. You can do them from minor scales, but you're going to really get yourself messed up. So just always do them from major scales. All right, so let's take a look at a few chords here. So these are what I would consider your basic chords, sans the diminished and augmented chords, but this is sort of your basic setup. And a major chord, the formula for that is going to be 1, 3, and 5, and that just means that we're going to be using the first degree of the major scale, the third degree of the major scale, and the fifth degree of the major scale. The symbol for major a lot of times will just be maj, or it could be capital M, or it literally just could be nothing, right? So just nothing there. And for an example, if we use say the chord C major, we would have the notes C, E, and G. Why? Well, because C major is the first degree of the major scale, E is the third degree of the major scale, and G is the fifth degree of the major scale. So let's keep moving on. Let's go ahead and build a minor chord, and that would be 1, flat 3, and 5. Now, this is a really key point. This is 1 from the major scale. This is a flatted third with respect to the major scale, and this is the fifth with respect to the major scale. Now, that's why it's really important, because we're building a minor chord, and so some people go, well, shouldn't I just use the minor scale? You could. It's going to get you mixed up, so you really need to stick with the major scale here. So even though it's called a minor chord, I'm still building it from the major scale. The symbol here is just little m, or maybe mine is another one. And that would look something like this if I did C minor. And we'd have C, E flat, and G. And this is, again, we have a flatted third right here. Okay, so it's taking the E, which is the third degree of the major scale, and I flat that to get the flat third. Let's take a look at a root fifth dyad. Now, root fifth dyad isn't technically a chord, but it's good to have as far as a reference point. And you'll notice that the root fifth dyad does not have anything here. It doesn't have any kind of 3, which means it's not major, it's not minor, right? There's no way to differentiate it. The symbol here for a root fifth dyad is just going to be R5, okay, or actually R/5 is probably better. And the example, let's say if we had C5, and that would just have C and G. So we're completely missing that third degree in the middle. A sus4, now we're here, suspended fourth, and that's going to have 1, 4, and 5. The symbol here would be sus4. That's the pretty kind of dominant symbol. So if we had the chord C sus4, we would have the notes C, F, and G. Once again, we have the first degree of the C major scale, the fourth degree of the C major scale, and the fifth degree of the C major scale. All right, moving on, let's take a look at a sus2. Well, a sus2, if a sus4 had 1, 4, 5, a sus2 is going to have 1, 2, 5. And we're going to say sus2. And this is a really key point here, because when we think about sus chords, a lot of times people just say sus. They're like, oh, it's just a sus chord. Well, they're not definitively saying, is it sus2 or is it sus4? And if they're not going to say it, if it doesn't say it on the sheet music or the person doesn't say it, I would assume sus4, because of the function of a sus4 is so much stronger than the function of a sus2. All right, and so the notes here would be C, D, and G. Let's understand why. This is the first degree of the C major scale. This is the second degree of the C major scale, and this is the fifth degree of the C major scale. Now let's look at major sixth. Here's a couple of interesting ones as we get down here towards the bottom. Major sixth, we're going to have 1, 3, 5, and that's going to come from the fact that this says major. So here I've got major, right? So major. But it says major sixth, and so I'm going to go ahead and add in the sixth degree. And the symbol here would just be M6 is usually what you might see, or you'll just see 6. Okay, and the example, so if I saw C6, I'm going to assume it's C major 6. There's no such thing as a C dominant 6th or something. And then let's go ahead and do the notes here. Would be, since we had 1, 3, 5, 6, we're going to have C, E, G, there's my major, and then my sixth degree would be an A. Okay, now let's go ahead and go to the next one, and this is where it gets maybe a little bit more interesting, but we have a minor sixth, and so the first thing I want to do is build a minor, and we recall what a minor looks like from here. All right, and so my minor is going to be 1, flat 3, and 5. So that gives me my minor part, and then I have to put a 6. And this is a really, really key point. And so I'm going to do this in a different color because I really want you to get this. And I'm going to do a 6. And you notice that the 6 I'm using in here is the same 6 in here. You go, well, that, okay, whatever. Why does that make sense? Why do I care about that? And I'm going to show you in just a little bit. And let's see, our symbol here would be like a lowercase, like M6, or you might see minor, MIN6. So C, M6, C minor sixth, and that is going to be, let's see, if I had notes for that, we'd have C, E flat, G, and A. Okay, so in general, what you notice is that, well, every chord has to have a 1. Well, hopefully that should make sense, right? Because without a 1, we don't have a name, right? So the 1 is the C, and if I don't have a 1, then I can't call it a C. Every chord in general has a 5. We can kind of break this rule a little bit later on, but it's pretty true. We can see that the distinction between what is a major and what is a minor is a 3 versus a flat 3. So then we have these interesting discussions about things like, well, what happens if you have a root fifth? Is that major or is that minor? What about a sus4? What about a sus2, right? Those things don't have any kind of a 3, so, are you free to make assumptions as to what key that is? And there's ways that we handle that and deal with that in the future. All right, so let's take a look at this minor 6 a little bit more closely because it's interesting. And so what we're going to do is we're going to draw or write out the C major scale. And the C major scale would look something like this, pretty basic. And let's go ahead and take a look at the C minor scale as well. And we know that the C minor scale, or all scales, are going to flat the 3rd, 6th, and 7th degrees. And so here we have this major 6, and it kind of makes sense because with the major 6 we said, okay, well, we're going to have 1, 3, 5, and 6. Okay, and that makes our major 6. So my question to you is, then why can't I just come over here to the minor scale and go 1, flat 3, 5, and flat 6? Because, shouldn't that be a minor 6? And the answer is no. So right here, you look at this and you see this is A versus A flat because remember that when we do a minor scale, we flat 3, we flat 6, and we flat 7. And what I'm going to tell you is that basically this concept of a minor sixth having a minor sixth chord, but it actually has a major sixth, right? So it's a minor chord with a major sixth. It's a little bit of an anomaly, right? It's something that we wouldn't expect. So it's a little strange. You would typically expect it to be that flatted sixth, but it's just the way that it is in music, and that's like the one thing that you kind of need to recognize. Now, when we built minor chords before, it makes sense here because we had 1 and flat 3, because the minor scale has a flat 3, so that makes sense. We can see that they both have 1s, they both have 5s, so it makes sense, how we built everything else, how we have 1s and 4s for our sus4s, 1s and 2s, for our sus2s, and so everything else makes sense. It's just this minor 6 where when a minor 6 has a major sixth instead of that flatted 6. And so that's something that I want you to kind of chew on. It's just a real thing. It's an anomaly. You just want to kind of mark it down and move on. Now, these formulas, the really important key here is you need to memorize them. And if you don't memorize them, at the very least, you need to know the basics of how they're constructed. So write them on a 3x5 card and keep them with you in your wallet. In our next lesson, we are going to continue to look at chord construction. Hey everyone, thanks for watching. If you enjoy what we do, just go ahead and take a moment to hit that subscribe button for us so that we can go ahead and continue to produce more great content for you.